Hello, poor people. How are you today? This is why the Epstein files would never be released. And I'm sure you peasants in the comment section, oh, they've released 3.5 million of it. But it doesn't prove anything. It rarely implicates people. It rarely gives context as to what transpired on the island. And in fact, the names of people who were implicated were either scapegoats or the pissed off the government. Let's take Elon for instance. At the beginning of it all, he was friends with Trump. He supported his campaign both financially, with his time, every single ounce of his energy was channeled to make sure President Trump gets into office. Along the lines, their ideologies begin to differ. They go back and forth on Twitter. Next, we see Elon. He's begging to be invited to one of these parties. So yes, he pissed off the government. As a consequence, they sacrificed him. But the main point I want us to explore today is why the files would not be released, or why at least it's taking this amount of time to be released. Mind you, they've been sitting upon this evidence for decades, and Trump was one of the first individuals to at least release something, give the public an insight as to what's transpiring in our democratic nation, which is at least something worthy of commendation. So that's the first thing. The second is, those files would never come out, and I'll explain to you why. There are two ways to rule a country: in favor of the oligarchy or the peasants. Unfortunately, you can't have both because one undermines the other. So if you rule in favor of the oligarchy, it's most likely you're subverting the votes of your electorate. It's most likely you undermine the common man in favor of the elites. See what transpired with BlackRock. In the Biden administration, BlackRock bought almost all the homes in America, making mortgage akin to oil, making it difficult for the average individual to pay their mortgage because commercial properties are focused on one thing, which is maximizing profits. So commercially, they're trying to increase the stakes of BlackRock. That's ruling in favor of the oligarchy. Conversely, if you rule in favor of the peasants, it's most likely you're undermining the authority of the oligarchs. That's the same thing that happens in, I don't want to give too much example that contextualize death and things of that sort. But once you begin to appeal to the common man, all kinds of trouble stems. Because the oligarch are powerful enough to overthrow you, to orchestrate a coup, while the peasants are powerful enough to tear you down on social media, riots, hate comments, things of that sort. So on one hand, you have people who can do really bad things to you. On the other hand, you just have hate, the absence of love of the public. So what President Trump is trying to do is straddle the fence. I think very recently he passed a policy that prevented BlackRock from purchasing more homes, stating the average individual should be able to acquire a mortgage, which was very brave of him. Like I said, the more you try to rule in favor of the people, the more you catch a bullet. And I think ever since the first assassination attempt, he has been very careful of what he says, who he says it to, what he tries to do. So implicating the most powerful people in your country for a crime is truly not in your best interest, for your sake, and for that of your family. Even for the economy. Because yes, they have the power to overthrow you from office. And mind you, Epstein, according to the files, was running one of the biggest blackmail rings. The master controlling Epstein is unknown till date. But however, one thing remains constant. He ran a blackmail ring. He most likely has used his power to fill the master's puppets in office. That's why today we have more foreigners running our judiciary than natives. And that is one of America's problems, which we'll talk about in a second. They are too over-tolerant. We'll talk about this in a second. But if you rule in favor of the peasants, you'll get overthrown. Let's take Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. Constantly, there are coup attempts, there are assassination plots uncovered. The recent one I heard, 5 billion francas was offered for his head. But because the people are tired of Western influence, they are tired of subverting themselves, they are tired of every single thing French has done for them, they decided not to turn on their leader for 5 billion francas. That's equivalent to 5 to 6 million USD. So it's a conscious decision they made not to overthrow him. Why? He's a man of the people. And you see, my philosophy is consistent from violence. Ruling for the people gets you their love, gets you their protection. How many politicians do you know in Burkina Faso? Please answer my question. You know Richard Sunak, you know Boris Johnson, you know all of these people. Why? Because that kind of democracy is really in favor of the oligarchs. But in a situation where it's spun in and of itself, you hear very little of people at the top than at the bottom. So how many politicians do you know in Burkina Faso? Exactly. So my principle still remains consistent. Let's move very quickly to America's biggest problem, which is over-tolerance. In Africa, if you don't look African, there's no way you're getting into politics. There's no way you're going to become the president of Africa. If you're a white man, it's impossible for you to rule our country. Same thing in Xi's China. If you're not Chinese, you're not Chinese. They don't care whether you have a birth certificate or whether you were born there. A black child is not a Chinese. North Korea, the same principle. Unfortunately, in America's case, a black man can become president. Tons of immigrants stroll into our country. Why? Because we're over-tolerant. Because of this over-tolerance, an external government is able to run a spy ring and fill offices with its puppets. This could never happen in China, because if you're not Chinese, you are not Chinese. The tactics that would have been relevant in Chinese is an attempt to recruit government officials. But this idea of filling your own people in offices, it's impossible. So one of America's biggest problems is this over-tolerance, allowing people from foreign governments to take decisions over your country. It's very stupid because it's most likely that individual you filled office with would always vote in favor for his government. He would always pass policies. Should we fund the war in XYZ? Yes. Should we give billions of dollars in aid to this country? Yes. He would always vote in favor for his country. Now, this has nothing with picking sides. It's as objective as the law of gravity. All I'm doing is a mere analysis on what is going on, the reason behind the decision making, why those files would never be released. He doesn't want to piss off his oligarchy. I think pissing off your oligarchy would not just damage you, it will damage the economy, it will damage every single thing you know. Is it wrong? Yes. What they did was wrong. There's no explaining it away. There's no trying to save face. All I'm trying to say is this is the reason behind the state hand. As always, my friends, a pleasure speaking to you. See you in the next one.